Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm very excited for today. I think I've been waiting for like 11 months to do this podcast with Lory. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Jen?
Good. I'm so excited. So I was your doula for your second baby. This may be one of those interviews I end up crying because we have such a connection. I think I have a connection with most of my clients. Some just more or differently where you become somewhere between a friend and a family member, and we kind of adopt each other forever. And you are definitely one of those people, but also your story is the one that hits me really hard, especially because it's so personal. So I want you to jump in and share your parenting journey with us.
All right. Cool. About 12 years ago, I had my first son, Max. And it was just him and I, and we just rocked it for about a decade together. And then my husband, Nick, came along, and it was everything that I could have dreamed of and more. And we got pregnant, and it has been such an amazing, beautiful, messy journey. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Everything has been, I just feel like going exactly as it is supposed to, and I'm rolling with it. I'm rolling with the punches, and I'm just celebrating the wins. So yeah, I'm a mom of two boys, and we kind of have a third son, Waylon, our dog.
Totally true. Totally true. I've met Waylon. He's been on my lap. Um,
Yep.
when you had Max, you were younger, obviously, 12 years, but I don't remember how old you were when he was born, and you were relatively alone. And I also know you were in a commercial.
Yeah, so I was 21 when I had Max.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it was just we hit the ground running, him and I, and it was a regular vaginal birth at the hospital. Everything went, I think, as it should have, as good as it could have. Everything was fine. And yeah, it was after I had Max, he just became just the glue of everything, and my whole world. And so we ended up doing a little commercial for my dad's business, which has been in operation for about 40 years now. And if you look it up, Sam Sparkle Shop,
Boop, boop,
you can
boop,
see
boop.
Max
He's
in it
great.
too. Yeah.
And your dad's great. We get our cars detailed there because we know you, and supporting local and knowing people in the community is such a big deal to me. So yes, I see your dad and apologize for my disgusting car, and please fix it. And he does. So yeah, the commercial, I remember when we met and you were like, yeah, my dad has this business and I've worked at it a lot over the years. And we were in the commercial and I was like, what? So it's great. I love the family run operated. And I know that you worked there off and on, and
Yeah.
you did the single mom thing and kind of just loved it.
Yeah. No, it worked out. It was really cool. And then when Nick came along, it was this piece that we didn't know was missing. And he is just he's the glue that holds all of us together now.
Yeah. So you guys met. Were you wanting to have more kids? That was the plan always? Because you weren't super
No,
young when
yeah,
Max was born.
I thought I was done with Max. And then I met the love of my life, and I thought how cool it would be to procreate with him.
It's a trap. It's a trap,
Yeah,
everyone.
it absolutely is.
So you guys got pregnant and you decided you didn't want to do the hospital. I mean, I think you said like things went like they should have. And often we feel a little steamrollered when we show up to the hospital, never having a baby, not knowing even what questions to ask, thinking that the medical staff is just, they know what they're doing. And so you wanted this to be different.
I did, yeah. My first birth, for all intents and purposes, I think it went fine. But I just had done so much evolution on myself over the years, and a home birth was something that just sat right with my soul. Nick and I both were absolutely on board for it, and yeah, that's where you came in.
It is. It was so great because it was Christmas time. So you
Yep.
guys had the Christmas tree up, you had twinkle lights, you had your like affirmation cards on the little twinkle light with the little clips, and the vibe was great. But that is how we met. And one thing that made your situation harder is that you were really fighting for the birth that you wanted, and that's not inexpensive.
Right.
Um, and like 85% of people in the state of Nevada qualify for Medicaid, and 55% of pregnant women are on Medicaid. And that means like the economy is really expensive here. It's one of the more expensive places to live. So it's easy for most of us to for a lot of people to qualify for Medicaid. And that meant you were doing a home birth in a really expensive place when you had Medicaid that would have paid for the hospital, and you had to pay everything out of pocket. And that always really touched me, that that's how important it was to you.
It was. It's gonna make me tear up, but my husband, he was like, I'm gonna pick up whatever side jobs I can because I want this just as much as you do, and we want it to be special. So we saved, I mean, every penny, and he worked extra. I was working extra. I mean, yeah, it was super important that we made it happen.
I remember you working at Sam's Sparkle Shop for your dad, detailing cars, and it was towards the end of your pregnancy. And I was like, I applaud women who want to like stay active and stay working, which you were doing both at the same place, right? You're homeschooling Max,
Yeah.
you're working this really tough schedule, working at a job that's physically demanding, very pregnant, and you're like, no, I'm going to work until I go into labor, and your dad finally kicked you out. See, I'm sharing. It's tough when you know the person because I'm sharing all the secrets. Yeah.
Right.
Like, but literally, you were like amazing because you're like, no, I want to save as much as I can. I want to work as much as I can. I don't care that I'm doing it pregnant. And I was like, holy cow, that's a lot. And I remember, like, I was glad that your dad was like, you're done. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should. You need to be done.
Yeah. He did that with Max when I was pregnant with Max too. I was going into preterm labor, and so he was like, okay, I think it's time.
Lory, we're pulling the plug here. You need to go put your feet up.
Yeah.
But you guys did. You worked so hard to pay for the birth that you really wanted. And I was just so proud of you because that's hard to do and it's hard to budget that, especially I know what it's like living here. And you could have just used insurance and not had to worry about anything. So you really, I was so passionate about wanting you to have the birth that you wanted because you were working so hard to be able to get that. So keep going with this story.
Yeah. So it's so funny. I think back now. I mean, I've had some time to think about it, and I think back on just all the prep that I did that went into it. As far as hypnobirthing classes, breath work classes, meditation, everything that I could possibly think of to make this home birth a reality. Um, and I think the one thing now in retrospect that I can see that maybe sometimes people don't take into account when they do all the prep work is that every baby has their own journey. And Wilder had his very own journey. Um, and so when the home birth got switched to C-section, we had to go to the hospital. None of it was planned. And it was like in that moment, Nick and I just knew, okay, I mean, we've been rolling with life. And in every way, this kind of represented that. This was just an extension of that. Like, okay, here we go. This is what we're doing now.
in my prenatals, I try to talk about, like, obviously we know what your ideal birth plan is. You're having a home birth, you had the midwives, everything was set up, you did tons more prep than most mamas do. And then I always want to have that contingency. It's rare that you transport. I think 95 plus, maybe up to 99% of the time, things go fine. Even
Yeah.
when it's a tough labor or you really need to work through a lot and the childbirth is unpredictable, but you still can stay at home and do it. And you hit a point where the midwife was like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I think you need to transport. And that's in every situation. I think if it had been a different midwife, if we had done something different, often it's like with a hospital birth, what if we had been at home? How would it have been handled by a midwife as opposed to an OB in a hospital? With you, it was like, the only thing that we could have changed is maybe a different midwife, but what could we have done? And there's a point where you realize nothing, and yet still there's this like heart tug of your heartstrings, like, why couldn't, what were we missing, what could have we done different? And there was really nothing. So you guys left to the hospital and I followed you. And were we planning a C-section from the very beginning, or vaginal birth just at the hospital? Because I thought it was.
Yeah, we were shooting for vaginal, and then it was just no progression that was going on at the hospital, and they said we have to get this baby out. So
And
yeah,
I
none of,
remember,
none of this
yeah,
was planned.
you were on your hands and knees on the bed. We were doing every position. It's like if we put you on your head and spin you like a top, and
Yeah,
you breathe in this pattern and your arm is over your head, like whatever. You're doing
yes,
all the things. And I remember you being on your hands and knees. And the thing about the hospital is, like, it's too much information a lot of the time. Baby's heartbeat, your contractions, you were on the blood pressure cuff. And sometimes we're just looking at the numbers so much. It's like, look at the person. It's too much information.
yeah,
But there was a point, I remember your blood pressure was taken and Wilder's heart rate was being watched. And I remember looking up at the nurse like, we need to get her back right now. Where there's always a shift in the room, because I wish no one had to get a C-section. But I remember those numbers popping up and being like, holy crap, she's crashing and baby's crashing, and how fast can we get this baby out of her? You were one of the few, I mean, I think there's been 3 in the last 60 births that I thought, holy cow, this is not good and we need to do something immediately. And it was a moment in that room and the time that we were getting you back there that was a little terrifying.
yeah. I think that was the scariest part for Nick and I, and you, and I just remember looking at you. I needed somebody, just like a pillar of strength. And even though, I mean, Nick tried to have a poker face, but he was worried.
He was I mean, normally I'm not laughing at him, like, of course he
Right.
was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that honestly was the scariest part for me, is the transfer from the room to the C-section room. It just felt like the longest. And then once we were on the table, it was a different story. But yeah, there was a lot of fear.
Yeah, I mean, when you want a home birth and you do all that prep, going to a C-section is the worst case scenario in your mindset. And I think, 10% of C-sections totally need to be done. But if the rate's 26, how can we alter the other 16% so they don't need to be C-sections? That's how my mind's always thinking when you're in labor and delivery and they bring up the word C-section, like, wait, is this one of the 16% that we can avoid by doing other things? Or is this one of the 10%? You were like a hot button. Like, you were definitely one of those 10% where there's not a question. We needed to do it as fast as possible. And always, always with clients, it's like a privilege to share your journey. But with you, like, I just didn't want to let go of your hand. And, for the dad waiting in the hallway, while you go into the OR and you're being prepped, there's about a 20-minute period that dad's in the hallway. And sometimes I'm with you and sometimes I'm with dad. It doesn't really matter, but like the nervousness of the dad in the hallway during that 20 minutes is probably one of the most terrifying. Although a C-section can be intimidating and overwhelming, that that separation is absolutely the worst, especially in a situation where we're scared, we're frightened. So let's go through that. How much do you remember? Because it wouldn't be a surprise if you didn't. And what things do you remember pivotally?
I do. I remember, I mean, down to the seconds. I just remember all of it. And um, something hit when you said the separation, just that anxiety that happens, and I could feel it. I could feel my own, and I could feel Nick's. Um, and it was honestly to date the hardest thing we had ever gone through together. Um, I think the biggest thing that I remember and that I do take with me from it was having you there with us. Um, just the ministry of your presence, never leaving our side, and not only providing support and comfort for me in one of the craziest times of my life, but also being that light for Nick. I think so often this happens and the the mom experiences everything, but I think the partner does absolutely too, and it's not talked about enough. Um, just the fact that you were there, and I remember just thinking that like I'm so glad. I'm terrified right now, but I'm so glad she's out there in the hall with Nick because I know he's freaking out.
Mhm.
And that brought me comfort. Um, and you, I mean, there wasn't a second that you weren't there. And when we went into this knowing that we wanted to have you as our doula, I had anticipated that it was going to be during a very monumental, like moving time in our life. But I had no idea that you were going to be such a part of our family.
Mhm.
Um, and I can never put into words how grateful I am for you. And even Nick, your Aunt Jen, like that's what we call you.
I
That's what the
love your
boys know you
babies.
as.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just, I think in that moment, especially of panic, when things go awry, it brings you absolutely closer to the people who are sharing that moment with you. And, I don't want to say we were trauma bonding, but you just,
A little bit. I mean, I think that that can be a negative or a positive thing. We made
yeah,
it a very positive thing, but definitely there's no way that your situation and how it happened couldn't have been traumatic. There's just no way.
right.
But making that as positive as it possibly could be. I always hate when people are like, well, all we want is healthy mom, healthy baby. Like, of course
Right.
we want that, but that doesn't make the trauma less traumatic. Like, let's
Right.
let's not minimize the rest. When
Yeah.
when doulas were first being allowed to be in the OR, which was almost 2 years ago, and I was one of the first doulas who went through, and I'm the director now of that program, getting doulas through. And the anesthesiologists actually are the ones that went to bat for doulas being in the OR. And I remember at first thinking, like, will that make a difference? I don't know. And now, like, if I could do 12-hour shifts just in the OR with people I don't know, but like, hi, I'm Jen, I'm the doula. This is what my role is going to be. I'm really excited to be with you through this because, like, you wouldn't get a single picture. You would be alone so much more of the time. And it's one of my, like, it's my least favorite thing that needs to happen, but my most favorite thing when it does need to happen is being in that OR. And you guys were just, I was just so relieved that it was a healthy mom, healthy baby because it didn't look like it was going to be for a little bit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys came out of that and I mean, We're lucky here that doulas can do that at Renown. And we went through that in the recovery room. What was that like for you? Because I think women don't talk about like throwing up and shaking is normal during labor. And then when you have anesthesia on board, shaking and throwing up is more common. So take me through what the C-section was like for you and then into recovery.
The C-section for me, and I'm gonna do my I'm gonna do my best to make this just real. And if it comes out sounding dramatic, it's because it was
It
for
is.
me. Yeah. Um, I just remember it being so cold, and just not
Yeah.
having, I think the biggest part is not having control of your body. I mean, when you physically can't move, um, and kind of being strapped down to the table. You just see people passing implements over you, and it was difficult. I felt that I was really fighting to just kind of be as present as I could, but like the drugs were kicking in, and I just I wanted to just be, and I wanted to just kind of stay in the moment. I wasn't, and I don't, yeah, I guess this is going to sound dramatic, but I was afraid of not staying in the moment where that would take me. Um, and I remember holding your hand and holding Nick's hand, and um, it was the only time I've ever actually been cut open. I've never undergone surgery. So kind of when it drops on you at the last minute,
Mhm.
that that's some scary stuff. Um, and then okay, so we got the baby out, amazing. Um, and that's all I cared about in that moment. And then
Yeah.
the recovery room was okay, and then pain meds started wearing off, and I just remember looking at Nick like, holy shit, what did we just go through? Did this just happen?
There's gonna be that oh shit moment. There's no way to
Yeah.
not have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so recovery was quite a process. And even when we got home, Nick ended up taking 2 weeks off of work because, I mean, it would take me an hour and a half to stand up because I just felt like stitches were ripping, and it was wild. It was crazy. Um, what a journey.
I referred a PT to you. I think, first of all, physical therapists work a lot with post surgery or post injury or post accident, right? And this is the number
Yeah.
one most done major medical surgery in the US is a C-section. And there is absolutely no support. There's no support postpartum physically, like no matter what, your body's going through a lot, right? And there's like no support postpartum at all. And that part really sucks. Like you don't have anything until your OB appointment 6 weeks later where they're like, high five, go have sex and lift some weights. There's nothing. And
Yeah.
it's such a disconnect to me, no matter how you deliver, but a C-section even more so because it is a major abdominal surgery. They're cutting through 7 layers of your body, pulling this baby out and sewing up 7 layers of your body. And there's no support for that. And so, and the hard thing is like insurance doesn't cover the PT or the chiropractor. Like the places that you could go to get the most help and support for your body aren't even covered and they're not cheap. So like I dive in and I've been through this surgery through my hysterectomy. They cut me hip to hip and the whole thing. So I've recovered from the surgery where they removed my uterus, but like it's just crazy to me how disconnected medical professionals are to women and birth in any way, especially this. So dive into that journey because I always visit on day 3, and that's the next thing that I want to talk about after we talk about your recovery.
Okay. I think it was difficult when we were being discharged
Mm.
because I think there was a form they gave me that basically, it was like a questionnaire, like I don't know, maybe like a 10 question questionnaire of whether or not I thought that I was experiencing depression. I don't know what I was experiencing. And I guarantee you, moms fresh out the gate don't either. Everything is just so much and overwhelming. And it took me some time. It wasn't, um, I mean, I think I even remember telling you, like, for a few days after we got back, I still thought I was in the hospital. I was afraid. I kept waking up every 2 seconds thinking they were coming in to check my blood pressure, check on baby. Um, and I was not well, and I didn't know what to expect. But I yeah, recovery was difficult. Physically, I was kind of in shambles. Um, and just emotionally, hormonally, everything was just haywire. It was like all of my wires had just gotten mixed and moved and some cut. And trying to operate after that with a newborn. And like I said, not even just for me, but for Nick. Um, it's a lot. And I think as far as resources go for postpartum mothers and families, I just wish there were more.
Mhm.
Um, you came over day 3 and had an endless list of really cool resources. And I think that was my saving grace because I knew I didn't want to be down anymore, like physically, emotionally. So I started working really hard. And a lot of it was too thanks of people that you provided me with our information, physical therapy, chiropractor. I mean, yeah, we just as soon as I got the 6 weeks approval, we started the journey.
I think, I mean, one thing that I'm glad that doulas have gotten better at are resources and connecting with the community. And every time I send somebody, like, I'm going to send you this person, she's my favorite because I work with all of my favorites, even though it's different for different people. But one thing, I show up on day 3 with every baby because usually when a baby's born, I'm leaving you on the highest high. And as far as Wilder being born, that was the highest high, but you guys got hit by a Mack truck. I like your labor and delivery was not euphoric at all. Having a healthy baby and coming out of it okay, those were the positives we were going with. It really was healthy mom, healthy baby, because nothing else was happy about this situation. It was so hard. But you on day 3, I said, day 3 is your lowest. That's you're sleep deprived, you're hurting, your mature milk's coming in, you're trying to figure out breastfeeding, all the things are happening. And day 3 is always the lowest low. But I was so proud of you because you looked at me and you said, I am not okay. And I need to figure out how to not be not okay. And most women are like, this is probably normal and I'm just complaining and I didn't know what to expect. But you were like, nope, I cannot function the way this has been going for this 3 days. And I was so, and I said, okay, great. Not that you feel that way, but like, let's talk about this right now. And I want more women to stop and say, I am not okay, regardless of
Mhm.
the birth, vaginal, C-section, the whole thing, because we don't. We're like, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It'll all be fine. It's fine. And you were like, nope, not fine. But then the next step is, okay, let's break this down. Talk to me about this. And then because there's no reason to verbally vomit resources if I don't know what you need. And what you did next that I'm most proud of is you followed up with every single resource. This is what I think I need. And this is what I'm recommending because of what you're saying to me. And you did every single one of those things. So talk about the resources that were the most helpful for you postpartum. Because I was concerned about postpartum depression on that day. I was concerned about you physically just healing and getting through it. So, and then there's lactation. Who did you use and how did they make a pivotal difference in your postpartum journey?
So one of the recommendations was Kelley for physical therapy.
Yep, she's local. Sparks Mobile Therapist. Shout out to her.
She is amazing. She came into our home, and this was just right around the time where I was starting to get mobile. She came into our home. and she was incredible. She was absolutely gentle. She didn't move me in a way that I could not move. She absolutely listened to like my body, to me, to what I was saying. And I cannot thank her enough, and just what she does, because she also realized there was not enough resources for postpartum moms. So
Mhm.
that's like where she specializes in, which is fantastic. And yeah, she was amazing. And then that was one of the resources. And Family First Chiropractor was also another one. And we started going there, and they helped with um, everything that I was going through physically in terms of my lower back having issues. They helped Wilder with his reflux, getting that started early. They helped Nick, like they saw the whole family. um, and just all the resources, like WIC, everything
Mm.
for, I was so stressed, that, my milk supply was short-lived. So I mean, there you were just coming in hot with resources like, okay, cool, how do we fix this? And there's I think there's resources to an extent, but not a lot of people know about them,
Mhm.
because it's not talked about enough. So, I mean, just having those lists
Every time
that
I
you put
meet
out there
with,
is great.
I try, but I'll go meet with somebody and they're like, we've been in existence for 44 years. And I'm like, how did it take me intense research and never found you? And then someone told someone, and I found out. Like, why is it that hard for me searching to even find them? And then, there's some like the chiropractor and the PT, the people I send you to, I usually know really well. Some of the mental health at that time, like I've changed where I send people to because of you, because the mental health, when you went through it and then you told me and it was like not the right fit, I was like, oh, fascinating. So now I specifically know who I would send to that place. And I needed to find more resources because of that and because of you. So the really interesting thing that happened with you is I was like, look, because you need postpartum resources, will you start vetting postpartum resources for me? Because I'm not postpartum. Like, you can actually go through the process of, and like, this is a resource. Go through it for me because you're in that season, and like give me a review on it. How did they work? Were they great? Did you find something better through them? And you've helped with that postpartum list. You've been instrumental in helping with that postpartum list because you were living in that moment where you needed the support and you were upfront about needing the support. So you were like my in the trenches researcher.
It's true, I was. I'm glad I could offer that.
Still. Still, I mean, still, I'm like, hey, would you mind looking this up for me? Like from a different perspective. And because I can get the resources and the information, and if I can go through the process, like easy with chiropractor and PT, and like I've used them both so that I know what it's like to be a patient of theirs. But I can't always do that. I'm not the right fit. I can't just sit in on group therapies. And there's some stuff I like. I'm not going to go to a lactation consultant as a client. I have no milk supply. So I can get to know programs, but not from the perspective of being in the trenches. And when you started looking at resources and giving me feedback, I was like, okay, wait, let's actually document your process so that we can figure out how to make this faster, easier, and more supported for other moms because you're there with me. So you have been for almost a year, my like, hey, Lory, can you please check this out for me? Even if you're just like making the phone call and seeing, is it a good resource for you? It can, one, because can you get a benefit out of it? And two, is that a good place to send people? So you have been like my rock star because you were so upfront about women need resources and I want every one of them I can get and send them to me. And then you were like, oh, and by the way, I found this. And oh, by the way, I found this. And so my resource list has grown postpartum because of you and because of your willingness to just be like so upfront about what women need.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so, it's so unspoken. For I mean, forever, since the dawn of time, women have babies and life goes on. But what nobody talks about is that time before life goes on, how the mom's doing,
Mhm.
how the partner's doing. And I don't know, I've just, whatever this was, I know it wasn't for nothing. And so it is a personal goal of mine to help my community in ways that I felt like I didn't have resources to, as far as, postpartum birth trauma. And in fact, there's a few postpartum support groups. There was nothing for birth trauma. I found one group in the UK, but like nothing here in the States. So I needed one. I needed a birth trauma support group so bad. And there wasn't one. So I created one. I had to.
Which is obviously the next thing. That's the next thing that I want to talk about. So you were like, we talked back and forth about like, what is the training? Is there a good training? You don't really need tons of training to be the facilitator of it, but you do need to have a lot of resources, which we had already worked on a lot. And
Yeah.
so, you take the resource database that you have for moms postpartum and just the ability to have conversations about trauma with enough training to facilitate that and then refer, which is like that's basically. So I was, when you were like, can we talk? I want to do this thing. So tell me about that. Tell me about like because you were looking for training for a while and you don't do anything halfway. So tell me about the trauma group postpartum.
Yeah, so it was just after a bunch of research where I was just seeking for help for myself, to go to one because I thought it would be, I couldn't find anything. So then it just kind of dawned on me, well, I could maybe, I could start one, and that could also be beneficial to me and whoever else needs to sit in on it. Um, so Nick and we started kind of looking into everything that I would need. I wanted to take some trauma training in terms
Hmm.
of being a group facilitator. I didn't know what I was doing, and I wanted to make sure that if I was doing this, I was opening a safe space for people to just talk.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure that however I was going to do this, I wanted to do it right. Um, so I did. I had taken some trauma facilitator group training. Um, and you had put me in touch with somebody who could have the meetings at their facility free of charge,
Yep.
which was also really cool, opened that door. Um, and it was interesting because I think that when I started telling people about the group, I mean, like across the board, I got the same response. "What? I've been looking for that. I don't we don't have that here." And it's just been kind of a driving force that I know that we need it. And I want it to evolve. I want it to also include partners and if they need a place to talk. And just have resources readily available, like pamphlets, papers, just anything that they feel that they need at that time. Um, and as crazy as it all went down, I think that the journey that I'm on now, I mean, I'm still, and I'm not out of the woods. I still feel all kinds of things, postpartum. And what I do think though is this journey has led me to so many different things. And not only, just being able to help other people, but being able to help myself. Everything like the work I've been doing this year and all of these different types of healing modalities just in conjunction with one another. I feel like I am then able to speak on it a little bit better. Like here's everything I've done. It may not work for somebody else, but here's my experience with this person. If you'd like this resource, it's here and it could possibly give you what you need.
Right. So the trauma group's still going.
Yes. And I do have this kind of image and goal I want to just switch around the name a little bit. Right now it's Biggest Little Birth Trauma Support Group. And I do want to make sure that people know there is emphasis on the birth trauma part of it, but I also want to make sure that it's like an all inclusive also for very much still postpartum moms and resources that they might need and that they don't know about. Um, I think this upcoming year is going to be a cool little evolution of the group. Um, and I think it would be awesome just having you come in.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd
just
love to.
anybody that's helped me along my journey, I want to incorporate because it's so important just having that community. And yeah, that's kind of the direction I want to take it.
I mean, how fantastic that you took your story, your journey with this situation, and you were like, wait, I need this help. And now I'm going to turn back around. I mean, I think you took a situation that was scary and not positive and traumatic. And you were like, how can I get myself super healthy? And then how can I help other people who are struggling with that too? I love that when you looked at a group and there weren't any, you were like, then I'm going to create it because obviously it's needed and very much so. So I am just so proud of you and everything that you've done in such a hard situation and love you guys just forever. Um, are there any other babies?
Oh, like from us?
Yeah, you guys gonna have any
No,
more kids? No, you're like
no, I
done.
think we're good.
Okay.
Nick took one for the team.
Oh, he did. Okay. Sorry. Like, didn't know. See, even I'm surprised sometimes. I mean, you never know. Sometimes you just know you're done and you're done and it's fine.
Yeah.
And it could be one and done. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, I didn't know what you guys were planning as far as that goes. Good for him. I mean, I think you took way more than one for the team, actually. So, like, Nick would never be able to complain about a vasectomy. Like, I don't know if I could do that. I'm afraid it might be traumatic. Like,
No, he's literally a rock star. He's like,
yes.
I will absolutely do this. Like, I got this.
Good. Okay, so no more babies, and now, and the other thing that we didn't touch on is milk supply, and the other thing we didn't touch on with that is that sometimes getting help isn't me figuring out how to help you or finding the resource to help you to keep breastfeeding. Sometimes it's the opposite. It's wait a minute. Why are we trying so? Yes, you may have really wanted to do this. Yes, it's natural, but there's a point where if it's a square peg in a round hole, we need to let go of the fact, the guilt and the shame and the I just why can't my body work the way it's supposed to and all the things that women say to themselves about any part of this journey that didn't go the way you were expecting. Your body didn't fail you, and that's why you had a C-section. I mean, that's not what it's about. And I think sometimes the resources don't look like what we all are trying to force them to be. And so, we didn't talk about that. You felt like your milk supply was failing. I know you had lactation support and just making that decision, wait a minute, instead of making myself crazy trying to force one thing to happen, let's go in a totally different direction. What was all of that like for you?
I think it was so obvious what was happening to me and maybe happening for me. Maybe I need to rephrase the way I say it. But I do think that because it didn't go according to plan, our birth, I think at the point that I wasn't producing enough milk, for me, it was just kind of obvious at that point that I was okay supplementing formula because I had already undergone so much stress and I didn't want to add any more. And I didn't even feel pressured. I think Nick and I
Good.
had like one conversation about it and we both kind of looked at each other. We're always just like this, but I mean, we looked at each other and we're like, let's change this. This is stressful. Let's not make it more stressful. And he's still going to get fed. And I think at the end
Mhm.
of the day, like there's so much pressure to perform. Like you just pushed out a human, however, which way you did it. Um, and the idea of perfectionism, performing, it's like, let's be realistic. It goes out the window. And, everybody's Facebook and Instagram reels, though they don't show that after somebody took a photo, there's a meltdown happening.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just be real with myself. Um, and so it was just kind of an easy decision. And I know, that there are a lot of moms that go through it, and it's very hard and difficult because there's a sense of failure.
Hmm.
But I just, if any moms are listening to this, I would just love to say to you personally, you are a warrior. There is no failure. You've done something that, not everybody can do. And so however you're able to exist after that and care for your baby, like you're perfectly fine and you're in your element. And whether milk's coming in, whether you need a lactation support specialist, however that looks for you, I mean, you're perfect.
Thank you for being on. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you for having me.